Hi, my name is Jordy Pact, and this is my author discussion on the Harlem Renaissance.
The Harlem Renaissance spanned throughout the 1920s and sprouted after World War I. It took place across Harlem, the northeastern region of the United States, and it was not only a social and political movement, but an artistic and philosophical movement as well. The Harlem Renaissance was by and for people of color that came to New York from the South during the Great Migration. The movement allowed African Americans to practice forms of art that were out of the norm and of typical stereotypes, giving praise and visibility to the African American community. Some of the most famous artists to come out of the Harlem Renaissance were Langston Hughes, Jacob Lawrence, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Zora Neale Hurston. Most of the work of this time period was celebratory of black culture, but the artists were also not afraid to portray the hardships that they had endured. Langston Hughes is most famous for his many poems, which were very influential throughout the Harlem Renaissance. His poem, The Negro Speaks of Rivers, displays the adversities that the African Americans forced into slavery had to face. The speaker in the poem speaks from his heart and provides glimpses of his heritage and memories attached with the ancient rivers in Africa. Hughes loved music, poetry, and the culture of the African American people. His life and writing was an enormous influence in the Harlem Renaissance. Jacob Lawrence was a prolific figure in the Harlem Renaissance and was known most for his paintings showing the African American experience. Lawrence was drafted into the Coast Guard during World War II and was assigned duty as a combat artist. His most acknowledged work was his 60-panel Migration series, which detailed the Great Migration. Lawrence is also widely known for his modernist illustrations of everyday African American life, and his powerful style helped fuel the Harlem Renaissance and inspired many people to follow in his footsteps. W.E.B. Du Bois was another figure of the Harlem Renaissance, with many talents and job titles. He was a sociologist, socialist, historian, civil rights activist, Pan-Africanist, author, writer, and editor. He was also a founding member of the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People, or the NAACP. He strongly protested against racism, lynching, and the Jim Crow laws. Du Bois was very passionate about the concept of Pan-Africanism, which is the principle or advocacy of the political union of all of the indigenous inhabitants of Africa. He made it his duty to set up several Pan-Africanist conferences to help free the African countries from European control. His two most recognized works are The Souls of Black Folk and Black Reconstruction, which mostly talk about the topic of race in African American life. He is also known for being the first African American to earn a PhD from Harvard University. In his death, he is known for being so influential to the African American community and a leading activist for the civil rights movement. Zora Neale Hurston was an American author, anthropologist, and filmmaker. Hurston's most famous work is her novel Their Eyes Were Watching God, which was published in 1937. In the book, she writes about the story of Janie Crawford, who is on a quest to find true love. The novel is significant because Zora Neale Hurston uses the motive of faith, which supports the theme that one should not conform to what is told to them or expected from them by society, and that they should pursue personal growth instead. This message connected with many African Americans and with the overall message of the Harlem Renaissance. In addition to her novel, she wanted to raise awareness of African American life and improve race relations in the South due to discrimination. Zora Neale Hurston made significant contributions to the acceptance of African Americans in society through her meaningful folklore writing and activism work. The Harlem Renaissance was a significant era in American history because it helped the African American people gain well-deserved recognition from the public in a mostly white world. It allowed African Americans to gain control over their own representation and experiences. The Harlem Renaissance was a very impactful time because it inspired an explosion of cultural pride and was perceived as a new beginning for African Americans.